What's going on YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. I am Dr. Tommy Martin, a combined internal medicine and pediatric resident. I'm in my 4th year of residency, and in this video I want to talk to you guys about all of the debt you accumulate trying to become a doctor. Just a warning, it is absurd. But before we get to this video, I want you to know that you are greatly loved, and that you are wonderfully and beautifully created, and that you are capable of far more than you could ever imagine. Let's get to this video and get a little depressed as we talk about this debt. Okay, so I went to a Caribbean medical school, so my statistics would be a little bit different than what I'm going to talk to you guys about, but I'll share with you my debt at the very end. So when we talk about medical school debt, we're going to look at all of the US medical students and see their average debt and how much debt they go into. And so I'm going to be pulling all this information from this website right here, the Education Data Initiative, which was updated in December of 2021. So it goes on to tell us that the average medical school debt is $215,000. Yeah, $215,000. That does not account for the undergrad debt that you take on before you get to medical school. And remember, if you watched my previous video on how much you make as a doctor, I said that you generally do not make anything until you become a resident. So unless you have a job in medical school or you have a job as a pre-med student, you're not making any money, and you're just throwing money into school, and going more into debt. And so I personally, as a pre-med student, I worked 3 jobs to pay my bills, to try to pay off some loans and things of that nature, but some people just cannot do that because it's hard. Pre-med is hard, medical school is hard, and I definitely do not recommend a job in medical school. But anyway, once you take the pre-med debt and the medical school debt, you get closer to $241,000 before you have even made a dime becoming a doctor. That's insane. When we look at this, we could see that this price has increased drastically over the years. Back in 1978, the debt was only $13,000. And so that's a huge well over 100% increase from 1978. But even if we look just in 2020, the average debt was $87,000. So from 2020 to 2022, it went from $87,000 to $215,000 of debt. So we can see that medical school debt just continues to increase and outpaces that of inflation. And this is just absurd. So even though I'm saying a lot of things that seem depressing, there is a silver lining at the end, which I'll get to. So where does all this money go to? If we look at tuition costs for medical students, it appears that the average tuition cost is about $58,000 for a first year medical student. And you could just do the quick math. I just kicked one of Oliver's toys. You could just do the quick math. 58,000 times 4 will get you close to that, between $215,000 to $241,000 of debt, which we talked about. But that's not the only thing. Even before you get to medical school, there's a lot of debt that you kind of accrue because of the application process. How much your financial or your pre-med advisors kind of say you need to budget for this application process. And generally, they'll recommend anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. And as a pre-med student, you're like, where is this money gonna come from? I've already been taking out debt for my pre-med or my university studies. I have to eat, I have to have a car, I have a phone bill, I have all these things. Like, where is all of this money gonna magically come from? And unfortunately, it comes from loans and getting more in debt. So the application process, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, and then you'll finally, hopefully, get into medical school after taking all of your exams and stuff. So if we take that on top of your undergrad and on top of your medical school, we're close to $250,000 of debt for medical school and to become a doctor. $250,000. $250,000. But that's not the end, and I hate to say that's not the end, but most of us, for some odd reason, aren't gonna get a sign-on bonus when we become a doctor and just get $250,000 to pay that down. So what does that mean? That means interest rates are gonna increase that amount that we have to pay off substantially. So I'm gonna pull up my phone here so we can just kind of talk about the loan repayment and the statistics for how much interest and things like that accrue, just because I don't know it off the top of my head. And so the statistics listed here says that the average physician ultimately repays between $365,000 to $440,000 for just their educational loans. From that, $165,000 of that is just from interest and interest alone. If you only had $200,000 in 10 years, depending on what the interest rate is, that can almost double. So as a physician, even though your debt may only be $260,000 or $250,000, if you don't pay that off within 10 years, then that is actually gonna end up being a lot more money that we pay back due to the interest. Now, the average interest rate on a lot of these federal student loans is about 4.3%. Which isn't terrible. It's not great, but 4.3% on $250,000 definitely adds up. Now, if you have private student loans, some of those interest rates can be very expensive. And if that is you, I was in the exact same spot, and I'll make a video on what we did to kind of get some financial relief from those private student loans. Okay, so now just a little bit about loan repayment. I'm not gonna go into all of this because it would need a whole video by itself, and this video is already getting kind of long, but there are different loan repayment programs that you can put yourself in. So I'm currently in public service loan forgiveness, and essentially what that means is that if I serve in an underserved area or a hospital that qualifies as being in an underserved area for 10 years, then after that 10 years, then my debt will be paid off. Now, I do not know if this is gonna go through. I do not know if it'll be there at the 10 years that I finish, but I'm currently 4 years in, and I've made 4 years of qualifying payments towards this public service loan forgiveness. And some of my colleagues that are attendings now, they have surpassed that 10 years now in all of their debt, $200,000, $300,000. Now, I also know that there are some ethical questions behind that debt being paid off or not, but just know that that is a possibility to put yourself in one of those programs. Also, when you find a job after being a resident, there are potentials to have sign-on bonuses or have the company or the hospital systems that you're going to work for pay off some of your student loan debt. But again, there are many programs that help with all of the debt that we accrue throughout this time period. But again, that would need a video on its own. So now for my medical school debt, I'm just gonna say I went to St. George's University in the Caribbean, and a lot of the Caribbean medical schools are much more expensive. And so when I look it up and when I see how much, we'll just do it really quick. What is the average cost of a Caribbean medical school student? That is definitely not what I need to look up. What is the average debt of a Caribbean medical school student? Okay, so this is just gonna be the first thing that I pulled up, and I'm not gonna go and validate this because it's very similar to mine, and so I don't think I need to validate it because I went to Caribbean medical school, and I'm sure that this is pretty accurate. But this is from studentloanplanner.com. Okay, so at this website, the studentloanplanner.com, it says that there's various Caribbean medical schools that are eligible for international federal loan programs. So we were able to get federal student aid, which definitely helps a lot. And then according to the federal student aid, they kind of pulled up some of the data here. This is from University of Antigua, American University of the Caribbean, St. George's University, St. Matthew's University, and Ross University. So they give one example. For example, the information sheet on Ross University states that on-time completion rate as of 2019 was 55%, and the median debt amount for the U.S. students who completed their program at Ross University was $348,000. So we could see from our U.S. counterparts that it is about $115,000 more than what it was in the United States. And I will say that my debt coming from St. George's University was actually more than this, and let me show you. Okay, so I was gonna show you guys exactly how much my debt was, but I forgot my username and password at this My Student Aid website, but I know it pretty close off the top of my head. So it's about $400,000 and then about $51,000 of interest. So about $451,000, which is around $200,000 more than what was quoted at the very beginning of the video. So that is a lot of money. And I'm gonna be doing a video soon about how we plan to attack that large financial burden. But now, quickly before the end of the video, the silver lining. I will say that the silver lining that is that once you become a physician, once you get through residency and you are a doctor, a large majority of doctors make a very good income. And with that income, you will be able to pay off this debt. Now, especially if you do not live just so luxuriously at the very beginning, you will be able to pay off all of this debt or get into some of the programs that'll help you pay off this debt. But even outside of that, all of the suffering that this debt makes you feel, all of the stress and all the anxiety that you feel suffering from this debt, just know that that suffering that you're experiencing does not compare with the reward of serving and loving your patients, seeing someone healed from cancer, having a patient hug your neck and tell you that you made, a big difference in their life. The reward of being a doctor, I believe, is worth that $450,000. The reward of being able to serve and treat your patients, I believe, is worth all of that debt that you accrue and accumulate. So although it seems like a giant burden, and although like all of this has seemed very, very negative at the beginning of the video, if you're a student thinking about becoming a doctor, please do not let the debt deter you, because I promise the reward of being a doctor is so worth it. Anyway, that's the end of the video. If you guys have any questions, make sure to comment below, and we will be doing a video very, very soon about how we plan to pay off all of the student loan debt and all of my streams of income as a resident doctor. So before I go, I want you to know that you are greatly, greatly loved, that you are wonderfully and beautifully created, and that you are capable of far more than you could ever imagine.